So I quite often read posts on forums about people wondering how to apply dry rubs and water slides and things like that. And water slides come up more often than most. So I thought I'd do a quick guide, just showing how I do it. I'm not saying this is the correct way, the best way, but it's certainly the way that I've had the most success. And quite a lot of my figures use it now, and they look pretty good. So anyway, the first thing you're going to need obviously are the water slides themselves. Now you can buy them, but I found a more cost-effective way to do it is to buy yourself some of this laser paper, and you can get faction symbol sheets off of TFW. You can print them out on this A4 paper. I think I had to slightly customize them because some of them were black. I made them all purple or red for the Autobot Decepticon faction symbols. As you can see, they're in a variety of sizes. They can be a real pain to cut out, especially the smaller ones. These are clear backed. You can buy both clear backed and white backed laser paper, water slide paper. I got one of each sheet. It cost me about £1 something per sheet, plus postage. All told, I think it was less than £5 to get this. I've had them for a couple of years now. They work really well on figures that have paint because they're much less harmful than stickers. They also have the benefit of allowing you to sort of play with them and reposition them as you're applying them, which is useful. There are a couple of downsides to it, obviously, but I'll cover that as I go through it. Anyway, I would advocate making your own because it's much cheaper. You can make as many of the sizes you want. So if you don't need the super small ones, you can print more of the big ones. You can do a bit of both. Cutting out the con faction symbols is much harder because obviously they have the crest on them, which is a lot harder to cut around. With the clear back ones, it's not so much of an issue because you don't have to get as close in or as accurate because you're not going to see the white backing, because that white is actually just the paper, not the backing. With the white backed ones, which actually do have white around them, they're not too bad with the Autobot faction symbols, but the Decepticon ones, if you don't cut them exact, they look a little bit raggedy. So in those instances, I tend to prefer the use of white backed stickers because they're just better. But I don't use them very often. I only use them on figures that have got very dark blacks or purples, because these obviously the clear ones don't show up and the white back ones look a bit naff. So things like your Insecticons or whatever, that I've got the bag cube ones. Anyway, I digress as always. You're going to need a few things for this. Obviously, once you've cut your faction symbol out, you can see here I've cut around it, and because it's a Autobot 1, you want to make sure you've got a decent size fit. So I think that's a pretty good fit for old Brawn here. Slap bang in the middle of his chest. Obviously it's a painted chest, so I didn't want to use something that could potentially damage it. So I thought a dry rub was, or a sticker was probably courting or tempting fate. So I've gone for this. See if I can keep the paint as looking as nice as possible. So I've cut it out. I haven't gone completely flush because I don't have to, because you won't really see it because it's clear backed. So you don't have to go as close or as careful as you do on the white back ones. Just use any normal, small pair of scissors to cut them out like that. Then what you'll need is a cotton wool bud. This one's seen better days, but it does the job. A pair of tweezers, and I always keep a bit of cotton wool on hand just in case you need to dab up excess water. So you also need a little pot full of lukewarm water. It doesn't need to be boiling hot or anything, just needs to be lukewarm. And what I do is this is the tricky bit, as you might expect. You have to clasp the symbol with the tweezers, hopefully on the bit that, oh, there you go. Try not to get the red part, because if you do it, once you put it in the water, that has a tendency to come off. So what I tend to do is grab, of course now I'm doing it on video, I'm dropping it, I don't normally do this. I grab it and then I submerge it for like anywhere between 5 to 10 seconds, depending on how warm the water is. This has been out for a little bit, so I'm probably going to give it a little bit longer than 5 because it's cooled down. Once you're happy that it's fairly well saturated, and warm, you can take that out. What I also do usually is I dab a little bit of water, not a huge amount, but a little bit on the area that I'm applying the decal to. It just gives you, I probably put a bit too much on there actually, but it just gives you the ability to move it around in situ. So what I then do is, excuse fingers, I separate the dry rub from the backing with my fingers as best I can. You can see it started to slide off there. And that's because I don't want to put tweezers anywhere near a paint job. And then what I do is I do it. You've got to be very careful at this stage. I mean, there are people who will say this is the wrong way to do it, but it works for me. I apply that, get rid of the backing paper, and then this is the tricky part because you're doing it roughly or mostly by eye. Now I'll use my finger for this a lot of times, and again people will say don't do that, but to be honest, until you start to sort of get down to fine tuning it, using your fingers fine. And you'll see it can be tricky because they got a bit of a mind of their own. They want to go where they go, and you'll get one part of it looking okay, and then another part will move and you'll have to start from scratch. You want to get it as central as you possibly can by eye, and that's not looking too bad. I mean, you could use some sort of ruler or something like that to see if you could get it completely dead central, but it's not easy to do. And obviously the placement is largely down to personal preference. You know, if you've got a bot, you might want a smaller symbol than this, so you might not want one that fills up as much of his chest. You might prefer it to be closer to the bottom or nearer the top. There's no right or wrong way of doing it really. You know, in the toon, the faction symbols tend to take up the whole chest, but I don't really like that. I prefer to have a little bit of room left. I mean, I'm just eyeballing that, and it's not completely dead central. I can see that, but you know, looking at it, it's not a million miles away. What I often do as well is put a little bit of water on the top, because that then seeps onto the edges and allows you to manipulate it a bit easier. You can push it with the cotton buds. Again, you need a little bit more water on the figure to do that. I haven't really put as much on the chest because otherwise it slides around too much, I've found. So there is a bit of trial and error with this, and you do require a fair bit of patience. But honestly, I think these give much better results to other things. They're really cost-effective way. I've just grabbed a little ruler here to see if I've got it roughly central. I mean, you're never going to get it dead on like this. That's what, roughly 3 away. So yeah, so it's a little bit further that way. Not a huge amount. Like, the trouble is now if I try and move this, I'll probably be able to move it, but I'll probably then move it too far the other way. And that's the problem. Once you start to manipulate them, you end up causing yourself more problems by moving things. And you'll see I've just done exactly what I've advised against doing. And this can be, it can be quite a time-consuming and slightly irritating process, but the results, like I've said, I believe are worth it because I think they look better. They look better than stickers, and the white ones maybe not so much because you have to cut them to size. But yeah, certainly clear back ones, if you can get away with it on light figures, they look much nicer to my eyes. And I've had people comment on my pictures actually and say, oh, where'd you get those faction symbols and things? This is what prompted me to make this little video actually, because it is so easy to do. One thing with dry rubs, actually, I didn't notice before I applied it, which is irritating. Sometimes they don't print properly, so you'll see I've got a little bit of red missing in that faction symbol there already. And that was before I even applied it. And sometimes that will flake off while you're doing it, so be prepared for a bit of trial and error. But as I say, with doing it like this, this way, it's so cheap that you don't really feel like you've wasted any money should you need to do it a number of times. And actually now, the way that is, I'm pretty happy with that placement. I don't think that looks too bad. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to make it worse if I play around with it. What I'll do now is sometimes I use the cotton wool bud to dab off, but I don't want to do that too much because I don't want to risk moving it now that I'm happy with where it is. So what I'll do is I'll just leave that now to dry. It takes a few minutes to dry fully. But yeah, now he's all faction symboled up and he looks pretty good actually. As it dries, you can then touch it up a little bit with the cotton bud to flatten it down more, get any wrinkles out, or use the cotton wool in fact. But yeah, hopefully this gives you a sort of a quick overview, an indicator of how easy it is to do this and how much it can add to the look of your figures. So yeah, thanks for tuning in and I'll see you next time.